Stephanie Denman here from the Denman Homestead, and today we are canning. We're canning. Yesterday I started and I did a lot of pickles in my water bath canner, and I went ahead and started some pressure canning, and I want to take you along with me to continue that pressure canning journey. Got kind of late, so I just went ahead and just got in my groove and did it. But today I'm going to do more. I'm going to be doing lots more. And we're going to be doing squash today, summer squash, our zucchini and our yellow crookneck squash. So let me show you what I've got right over here. Got my mason jars, my cutting board, and we're going to do something called a cold pack method. So we're not going to do anything preheated. Everything's going to be room temperature, coldish. We don't have to worry about hot jars cracking or anything like that. So over here, I've got my 23 quart Presto pressure cooker on the stove. Stove is not on, but today I'm going to take you along how I do my pressure canning of my squash. So yeah, let's do that. I'll show you what I do. Okay, so I've already prepped some yellow squash, and I've just cut it in chunks and I put it in the refrigerator in a gallon Ziploc bag. And so these are my quart jars. Some of them are wide mouth, some of them are regular mouth. I just collect them over the years. It's just the size of the opening of the jar. And yeah, so these are all sterilized and washed. Washed a bunch of them in the dishwasher yesterday when I started canning. So I'm just going to put in these jars my washed and pre-cut yellow squash. And I ran out of my zucchini cut up, so I'm going to cut up some of that and put some in these jars as well. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, just dropping it in. As I drop it in, I'm kind of just shaking it around just to get them to settle at the bottom. Sometimes they end up with like really large space on the sides and stuff, so I want to make sure that I'm getting as much as I can in there without smashing it, because when it cooks in the pressure cooker, they will shrink. You'll think you filled this thing all the way to the brim and there's no extra space, but then once they cook, you're like, what? Let me show you. This is some of my zucchini. And I filled this thing to the top. And I was like, wait, what? What happened here? Yeah. But pressure canning I enjoy too, because I don't have to really worry about a brine so much. Like if I'm just canning this to go on the shelf to eat in soups or stews or as a side dish later, I don't have to, the house doesn't smell like one big vinegar. Like a pickle exploded in here. So it is nice and easy, but it's a much longer cooking time, a much longer cooking process, because you really want to make sure that the canning process kills out any sort of bacteria, and that is why we pressure can certain things and we can water bath certain things. They're not interchangeable. You cannot pressure can everything. You would think, oh well, pressure canning, it kills off every bacteria, every botulinum, spore, whatever. But some things aren't very edible after you pressure can something. They turn kind of mushy. Texture isn't great. So some things are just better crisp and crunchy, and they're better in a water bath. And a water bath could be completely fine for certain vegetables. Like cucumbers that you're pickling with vinegar, fine, totally fine to water bath them, because the acid that you are cooking essentially your cucumbers in, it doesn't allow the spores to survive in that high acid content. This is just going to have water and a little bit of salt in it, and it's not going to have anything inside of it that would kill off spores of bacteria. So we have to pressure can it because the pressure canning process takes the temperature higher than boiling water does. So boiling water alone doesn't kill off some of the spores that those bad bacteria can carry, but pressure cooking does kill that off when done correctly. So don't be afraid to pressure cook. I know that there's a lot of horror stories about pressure canners blowing up and exploding, but these modern pressure canners, or even the olden day pressure canners, are still, the modern ones have a lot of safety features on them now, but so they're locking, they have a locking mechanism in them so they don't explode, or pressure valve relief mechanism, so when it is under too much pressure, it will pop a valve so that pressure is released and the top doesn't explode all over your kitchen. So the newer ones definitely are more kitchen safe. The older ones, not to say that they're not kitchen safe, they're just, you just have to take proper precautions in storing them and not letting their seal get, old and cracked. But yeah, pressure canning is very rewarding because you can put up a whole lot of vegetables that are low in pH, like green beans and corn and all those things, green beans in a can. I love green beans, like green bean casserole and green beans as a side dish. And so I want to be able to save our green beans and put them on the shelf without pickling them. I don't want to have to pickle everything. I love pickled okra. So we'll pickle some of that. But I want to be able to have, squash and green beans without it being pickled. So a pressure canner is pretty cool for that. So I'm going to go ahead and fill these with water and add a little bit of pickling salt. If you're going to add salt, you don't have to add salt, but I'm going to add some salt in here just for a little bit of added flavor. Probably a little less than a teaspoon each. And it needs to be a pickling salt or a pink Himalayan salt, but whatever salt you choose to use, just make sure that it's not iodized salt, like table salt with extra iodine added. The iodine can make it cloudy and give it an off taste if you process it that way. So I have some pickling salt that I'm going to use, and I'll show you what it is. So this is the salt that I use for canning and pickling. It probably looks like it would taste like a pickle, the salt, but it doesn't. It's just salt for canning and pickling. So I'm just going to add a little bit in here each. Oops. Okay, I'm going to fill these up with water. Okay, I filled up all of my jars with about an inch headspace, which just means there's about an inch of room from the top. And I'm on a well. I have well water, so I'm not concerned with additives in our water. But if you're inside like city limits or with a water treatment facility that treats their water with like chlorine, fluoride, just be careful with you may want to do a filtered water or maybe water from your refrigerator, filling these up so that there's extra filters in place. It may affect the taste and consistency and color of your vegetables when you can if you're on city water. So I just filled mine up with the tap from our well water, and right now I'm using a chopstick. You can use whatever you want, but I'm just kind of sticking it down the sides, and I'm trying to get all the air bubbles out to, sometimes when there's a lot of hidden air bubbles, sometimes you need to add a little bit more water because air will escape, and then it'll create a little bit more headspace that you weren't thinking was there. And so you need to add some more water after you get the bubbles out. All right, and now I've just got a paper towel. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run this paper towel along the top of this mason jar because I want it to be dry and free of any salt or water or debris. Some people use like vinegar, a little bit of vinegar solution on top of the rag or on the rag to wipe down to kill any extra bacteria that might be along the rim. I know that these jars are freshly washed, so I'm not concerned. So let me explain why it's important that you have a clean rim around your jar, because each of your caps is going to have this orange seal on it. This is what is going to create that suction to it's going to heat up and create a suction ring around your mason jar. So that's why we need to make sure that that this would create a good seal and suction around the top of the jars. And then you're just going to take your rings. Now, I do reuse my rings. I don't reuse my lids. So and I'm not trying to be canning police, you do you, whatever you want to do at your home. Some people reuse their lids. Okay, up to you. I find that the lids and the rings are fairly cheap for me, that I don't need to reuse these lids. I will reuse the rings, and I'll show you for an example, this one. And I will throw them away if they get too bad, but there's a little bit of rust in there. The rust isn't going to hurt anything because it's going to be on the outside of the jar, and the main purpose is just to hold the lid onto the jar. So not a big deal, and a lot of times after some canners have sealed and pressure canned their vegetables, they'll just take the rings off and just have the lid on the jar, on the counter or in their pantry, and the rings won't even be on them. So I will use these unless they are damaged in some sort of way where they can't hold down the seal properly all the way around. But if it's just got a little bit of rust, and I'm sure I could throw them in a pot of vinegar or something and get that rust off, but it doesn't really bother me too much. Okay, so now we're going to put these in the canner. Okay, so with my model canner, it actually has little grooves on the side of where to fill the water to. So I filled mine, and I'll try to show you. Mine comes with a little rack at the bottom so that your jars are not flat on the bottom of the pot to prevent cracking and breaking and overheating. So it's got that protective, this on the bottom, I'll show you. It just lays straight on the bottom. I also added in a little bit of vinegar to my water, my room temperature water. And what that's going to do is, because I'm on well water, we have hard water, so it will help from cloudiness of the jars on the outside and my pot from getting like calcium deposits and things like that when you heat stuff up in it. So I'm just going to set my jars in here. Make sure that you don't overpack your canna. You don't want to have them like so tight that they rub against one another or can potentially crack and break. So I'll show you what mine looks like here. So unlike water bath canners, you don't have any water that's going to be above the lids. In a water bath, you're going to want your water to be like an inch or two above the lids. It's totally submersing your jars, but not with a pressure canner. So this is just going to be basically steamed at a very, very high temperature and pressure. Pressure is going to build and cook the food within the jars and killing off any sort of bacteria that way. So I'm going to take my lid here. My canner has these arrows. Try not to make you sick. But my canner has these arrows here that line up, and it tells you which way to open and close it, so it makes it real simple. This is my weight. This is my jiggler. I'm going to set this to the side for a second because we don't need this quite yet. And I'm going to close this. Okay, this is my pressure gauge here. So I know that my recipe, I'm going to need to bring this up to 10 pounds of pressure. But before I do that, I need to heat this up until this vent here starts to steam. When there's a steady flow of steam coming from this vent, I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes because that is going to start building the heat within the pot with a steady boil that we need. Once the 10-minute timer has gone off, I'm going to put my little jiggler weight on here. If you are in a higher elevation than sea level, I think it starts at like 2,000 feet, please do not quote me on that, you're going to need an extra weight depending on how high you are up to counteract the altitude. For me, I'm good with this standard one that it came with, but you can definitely alter your weights depending on your altitude. Each canner will come with instructions, okay? So it has like a set teaching you how to use it, the safety features, and all of that and how that works. It also comes with the safe cooking instructions. So if you have a specific, if you want to can asparagus, it shows you at what pressure. If you want to can meat, if you want to make a stew or jams or jellies, it tells you exactly what you need to do at what pressure and for how long you need to cook them. I have these two little features here. I don't know if you can see. This right here and this right here. These both will pop up whenever the pressure is building, whenever I put this weight on here. This will say that this is locked and it's under immense pressure. So we will not be opening or trying to open this up while under pressure when these are lifted. So let me show you. This PSI gauge here, we're going to want, after this starts steaming and for 10 minutes straight, we're going to put our jiggler on it. And then this is going to allow the pressure to build inside to 10. It will keep going if we keep the heat steady on this pot. So I'll have to reduce the heat on the oven so that it maintains a constant pressure at 10 pounds, 10 psi. So that's what we're going to do now is we're going to wait for this oven to heat up and start this the steam process, and then we'll make it to the next step. Okay, I'm not sure if you can see it, but it is steaming and it has been steaming for 10 minutes. And we are going to add on our weights here and or our jiggler, whatever you want to call it, our weight, and we are now going to build this pressure to 10 pounds, 10 psi. And once that has reached 10, we're going to lower the heat because right now it's on max, and we are going to set the timer for 30 minutes. Once I added that on, my indicator here popped showing that this is under pressure, so you don't want to try to take the lid off when it's under pressure. And we will just watch this dial and it will slowly start to climb up. And once it does reach 10, we will set the time for 30 minutes to start cooking our squash. And if you can see, it's already starting to move up. I will turn the heat down when it gets probably a couple notches before the 10, because if I wait to turn it down when it hits 10, it will still be really hot and won't have a chance to regulate the temperature too well. So I'm going to probably crank down the heat and it will continue to rise to 10. I just know my stove and my oven well enough that when I need to go ahead and lower the heat for it to maintain that 10 pounds of pressure. So we'll just keep an eye on this and then crank down the heat, and then we will start the timer for 30 minutes. Alright, so we're just about 10 pounds pressure, and I'm going to go ahead and start the timer for 30 minutes. Okay, the timer has just gone off. 30 minutes has passed. I turned the heat off, and I was able to carefully lift it gently and move it off the heat. And I am now just letting the pressure come down naturally. I am not going to take off this weight, and I'm just going to let it decompress. And once this has gone all the way down to 0 and this has sunk back down into the lid, it will be safe to take this off and then open the lid, and we can get our cans out of the canner. But this is going to take a couple minutes. It's already starting to drop in pressure some. So we are just going to wait and see. While we wait on that, I wanted to show you the difference between what is a sealed can and what is not a sealed can. So I did these yesterday in the pressure canner. These were in the pressure canner and these were in my water bath, but all of these have been sealed. And the way I know that is that none of the lids are popped out. And by what I mean, this is an empty one, but for example, this is a seal that is not sealed properly. So if you were to have something in this with contents and you did a water bath or a pressure canner and you were able to click this up and down, this is a broken seal. This is not sealed at all. But these all here have sealed completely. It's been a day, and yeah, so none of these have broken seals, so all of these will be good for consumption and storage. You can take the rings off of them once they're sealed if you'd like and just store them this way, or you can keep the rings on them. There's no real benefit to keeping them on, but if you'd like to, you can. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that while we wait for the pressure to come down off of the pressure canner, what a seal looks like when, or sounds like too, rather, when it's been broken or when it's not completely sealed properly. All right, we just got back from baseball and I let this naturally, it's still warm. I let this naturally release while we were gone. So the top is down, and now it is safe to take the weight off the top. I'm just going to turn it to open it. And I don't know if you can see, but there are still some bubbles appearing in the containers, and that's normal. So your canning, whatever you're canning is going to continue to cook whenever you set it on the counter. It's going to be very hot. So just be aware of that. Try to show this to you and not break it. But if you could see, there's still bubbles because it's very, very hot still. So you're going to want to lift it straight up out of the canner. You don't want to tilt it. Just lift it straight up and on the counter to sit for 24 hours. And then tomorrow, if you've noticed that the tops have not sealed, it doesn't mean that you cannot eat it now. It just means you need to stick it in your refrigerator and eat it within the next 2 weeks. But it will not be shelf stable if the top did not seal properly. So that's pressure canning squash. So we'll just let this sit, and in a little bit you may hear some popping going on. That may be the tops of them sealing if they haven't already. And yeah, we'll just check on them tomorrow morning and then put them in the pantry when they're all done. These are the ones that I did yesterday that are done. They're no longer bubbling. They don't bubble for that long, just until they cool. But the ones from yesterday all sealed. My water bath pickles and my squash and zucchini. So we'll have a good amount of squash to put away in the pantry for meals to come. So thanks for hanging out with me today on this busy day of canning and cooking and baseball, and There'll be lots more recipes, canning recipes and tutorials to come because we've got a lot more stuff coming out of the garden coming soon. So thanks for hanging in there with me, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys.